Hi guys, hope you're well. I just wanted to speak to you today about the concept of time because an interesting discussion sparked recently in one of my posts about time, and somebody asked the question that they were under the assumption that time is man-made, it's a man-made construct, and if it's a man-made construct, then does the how do the galactic energies coincide with certain key dates on our calendar? For example, we received an incoming wave on 1010, which was October 10th, and then another wave is expected on November 11th, and another one on December 12th. These are all key time portals. So I wanted to shed some light on the concept of time and clarify a lot of concepts that cause confusion, because time is one of the most tricky subjects to explain. I'm no physicist myself, but I do read a lot because on this topic, because this is something that really intrigues me, and I've only scratched the surface, but even the most adept quantum physicists may be challenged to explain the concept of time to the layman. And so I'll do the best I can, bear with me here. So the question was, how do portals work? For example, why is the energy wave sent to us on 11/11 or 12/12? And how does that work? So first of all, to clarify, time is not man-made. Time is not a creation, not a human creation. Time is a creation of space. Time is a creation of the powers that created this universe, and those are really extremely powerful beings called the founders who originally seeded this universe with planets and stars. And when all of creation began, so just to step back, before creation began, before this universe came into existence, there was no time, because there was nothing there to measure time. There was just empty space. If you have infinite empty space and God existing within infinite empty space billions and billions of years ago, before we even have the concept of stars and planets, there's simply no time, because God simply exists in eternity in that moment. So the measurement of time begins when physics is created. The measurement of time begins when objects are created and physicality is created. So when the Big Bang occurred approximately 14 billion years ago, and out of that huge cosmic explosion were created bodies of gas that gave birth to the stars, and gave birth to the galaxies and the solar systems and the suns, moon, stars, and the planets. All of these bodies arranged themselves in orbits, and these orbits are the very thing that create the measurement of time. So as everybody knows, the orbit of Earth around our sun takes 365 and 1/4 of a day, and that gives measurement to a year, and so forth. And the axis of Earth around the rotation of Earth around its own axis gives us the concept of the 24-hour day. So what is our concept of a day, and what is our concept of a month and a year in our solar system may be very different from a different solar system. For example, I don't know this, but for example, let's suppose in the Pleiades star system, there's a planet that rotates around its home star, and it takes 1,000 years to complete that circle. So their year is going to be 1,000 years of Earth time. And there are systems out there that have extremely large spans of time that they cycle through. So this is basically how linear time was created. Linear time is sort of an illusion that was created for God to experience physicality, because if you're an eternal being and you're outside of physicality, you can't really experience what it is like to go day by day and have linear experiences. You have to really make yourself small into the size of the grain of a sand, comparatively speaking. So God shrunk his energy and divided himself into billions and trillions of beings, which are souls. And these souls were dispersed throughout the universe to experience what it is like to live in physicality. So God, out of curiosity, wanted to experience physicality, and that gave birth to the concept of time. So we can have the past, present, and the future. So that is to say, the concept of time was created with the beginning of the universe, with the first arrival of the stars in the galaxies. But the concept of linear time really is an illusion. So what does that mean? You can think of our reality, this whole universe that exists. Think of it as a bubble. Let's say create a bubble in your mind, and let's say all of existence is inside that bubble and God exists outside that bubble. Okay? So physical matter vibrates at a maximum rate of 333 cycles per second, 333,000 cycles per second. That is the threshold between spirit and matter. Okay, so bear with me here. I'm not going to go into the physics of how electrons and particles and all of that vibrates, but just grasp the concept that around 333,000 cycles per second is where we can retain the form of matter, where we can touch things. When we die, we enter the spirit world. So we go from inside the bubble to outside into the spirit world. And in the spirit world, there is no time. So just to give you an example, the first thing that happens after your death is you exit your body. And in that state, you're an etheric being. Your vibration suddenly shoots up way beyond 333,000 cycles. And because you're not in a physical body, because you're outside the dimension of physicality, you're now able to literally look at the whole of Earth. But you can, with your consciousness, you can tune into any time frame that you like. So the first thing that happens when you die is you're on Earth, and it takes a little bit of getting used to, but you can literally think of, hey, wouldn't it be cool to see the moment I was born? And just by that thought, you manifest being in the room where you were born. So you're suddenly able to jump through time. You're able to time travel. So this is one of the most exciting experiences that, well, we've done this so many times because we've had many lifetimes, but every time we die, this is one of the most exciting things that we do, is we review our whole life. And not only our whole life, we can see the linear progression of all of our lifetimes that led to this life. But to really bake your noodle even further, all of your past lives are playing out simultaneously. Okay, so if you look at the concept of time existing inside this bubble, if you're in the spirit world, you can be outside the bubble and say, I want to look at the past, I want to look at the future, I want to look at the present, I want to look at this, I want to look at when Columbus discovered North America, or I want to look at when Earth was born 4 billion years ago. You can actually go there in the blink of an eye. So what does that really tell you? It tells you that when you're inside the bubble, everything appears linear, like past, present, future. But when you're outside the bubble, you can literally change the channel, which day do you want to go to. So That is to say, when you're looking at time from outside the bubble, you can literally see that all of time is occurring simultaneously. It's simply like which channel of the television. So imagine you're in front of a television set and you have 100 channels, and those 100 channels are the whole history of planet Earth. Like channel 1 is like when an amoeba was born, channel 2 was when plants were born, channel 3 is when the first animals arrived on land, channel 4 is when dinosaurs came, channel 5 is when the Anunnaki landed on Earth and created the first humans. And yeah, so let's not go there yet. So you get the idea. So think of all of time as simply channels on a TV set. And with your remote control, when you're in the spirit world, you can literally review any channel you want. You can jump into time. So to answer the first question that was asked, how does the spirit world manifest certain events to occur on key time portals like 11:11 and 12:12? Well, it's just that our solar system is encoded. Each one of the stars and the planets, their cycles are encoded and they're not random. So when it's 11:11, there are certain alignments of the planets and stars that make it very easy for higher dimensional beings to jump through portals and enter Earth, or send certain energies to enter Earth. And they utilize these key portals to send us upgrades. So it's like a window of time appears on key dates like 11:11, 12:12, or there's many out there. These are just the examples I'm using. There's the solstice is in this summer solstice, June 21st. Then there's the fall equinox, which is around September 22nd. Then you get the idea. So basically there's all of these portals and key dates that give higher dimensional beings that exist beyond time the option to either time travel and enter our reality for a certain period of time, or send us energies. And usually it's a combination of both. So that is why certain galactic waves are sent to us on key dates. That's how they enter and intersect with our reality. Now, the concept of time is so complex that it will our language simply does not contain the words or the concepts to explain time properly. So the way we can explain time is there's linear time and then there's vertical time. Linear time is the one that we're all used to, is like past, present, future. And vertical time acts like a spiral going upwards. Okay, so have you ever heard of the concept that time repeats itself? I'm sure you have, but basically, or you may have heard of the concept that history repeats itself. Well, it does. So the way we can explain vertical time going in spirals is that history has a way of repeating itself. So one example of that is, if we go back into our galactic history millions of years ago, we'll find that the current themes that are playing on planet Earth have are a different variation of the same themes that we have played in our ancient galactic history. For example, if you go back to the Orion star system millions of years ago, you will find, and this may sound like I'm giving you the storyline of Star Wars, but Star Wars was based on reality. So just bear with me here. Okay, so when you go back a long time ago into a galaxy far, far away, you go to the Orion star system, and I'm not making this up. You find that the Orion star system had been taken over by a reptilian force, a very dark reptilian force that sought to control the population and really subdue them. and this was one of the most densest control systems that had ever been conceived of. And it's similar to the Empire and how they created, how they fought wars over the galaxy, took over certain planets, and subdued the population into various forms of mind control and slavery. So all of these things did exist in the Orion star system. And what occurred was that the population of a lot of planets was under intense mind control, to the extent that they had created force fields around planets that even after you die, the soul was trapped in the force field, and it was forced to immediately reincarnate back on the planet. So even death was not an exit option. So it was that bad. And the governments had implemented control mechanisms on the population that they literally controlled every single aspect of people's lives. So naturally a resistance movement started, similar to the Jedi movement that is depicted in Star Wars. And the resistance movement in the Orion star system was called the Black League. And this was a league of people who had achieved spiritual awakening, and they decided that they have had enough of the government control, and they took all their friends and family and they started creating colonies underground. So for a long time, the Orion government or the powers that be did not even know that these underground resistance movements existed until they were flourishing to the point where there were like millions upon millions of people living underground out of the control clutches of the government. But so they actually started warring against the government. But what they did not understand is that they chose to fight fire with fire. What they did was go into an all-out war in the Orion star system. So both the reptilians and the resistance, the Black League, were in a head-to-head war. But because you cannot fight fire with fire, you cannot fight evil by creating more destruction. It just destroys everything. So in that time frame, millions of years ago, that resistance movement was squashed. Eventually, they came to a point where some souls, this is like fast forwarding into a lot of history since then, but a lot of souls figured out a way that they could squeeze their way out of the force fields that surrounded their planet, and they found their way to the Maldek star system, the planet Maldek in our solar system, and they escaped and found refuge in Maldek. And this was again like in our solar system's ancient history. There was a planet called Maldek that existed between the planet Mars and the planet Saturn. And at that time, the sun used to glow a bit hotter than it does now, and the sun was also larger at that time. So because of the intensity of the heat of the sun, Mars and Maldek were both habitable planets as well as Earth. So the reptilian forces eventually realized that there's a lot of souls that are escaping from their system, and they came, history repeated itself. They came to Maldek, they created war, and as a result of a nuclear explosion on Maldek, the entire planet was destroyed. Okay, so the current, if you look at if you Google the asteroid belt, you'll see that there's a whole belt of shattered rocks that exist between Saturn and Mars. The asteroid belt is actually the remnants of the planet Maldek. So Maldek was destroyed, and all the souls that were all the souls were literally perished within moments of that explosion, and those souls sought refuge on Mars. And then the same cycle repeated on Mars. Mars used to be a habitable planet. The surface of Mars was flourishing with civilizations and life, and eventually nuclear holocaust made the surface of Mars also uninhabitable, and the whole population moved down into underground societies until the point they simply ran out of resources. So these are all dramas of Orion playing out. And so if this rings any bells in the current drama that we're playing on Earth, when Mars was destroyed, all the souls from Orion came to planet Earth. And the same reptilian forces that sought to control those forces are now the forces in charge of our governments and creating these elaborate mind control systems that have dumbed down our population. But on Earth, at the present time, we are in the final cycle of that history repeating itself, because this time we figured out that we cannot fight fire with fire. We are going to break the cycle of time, and we're going to finally ascend as a collective race. And we're going to do that by simply maintaining a vibration of peace and love within our hearts. Because if we figured out as a race that if we do not fall into anger, rage, hatred, blame, all of those lower vibrations that suck us into darkness, then nothing can touch us. That's the way to ascend. So we finally figured out as a race how to escape from this trap, this cycle of time, and we've already ascended as a planet. It's just that our physical reality has not caught up yet. So that's to explain, that whole story was to explain the concept of cycles of time. So history repeats itself through cycles, and vertical time is simply spirals of time. So the lower spirals may represent Orion, and then the next cycle may represent Maldek, and the next cycle may represent Mars, and then the current sagas on Earth. Even the world wars were just a remnant of the destructions that we've already played out on other planets. We've already almost destroyed ourselves. So I'm just going to look at a few notes that I've made here. Yeah, so it brings us to the concept of the now moment. If you really think of time, linear time is an illusion because nothing really exists other than now. If you think of the concept of the past, it's just your memory. And if you think of the concept of the future, it's just a projection. If you can say, well, I'm thinking of the future sitting here. I'm going to be at work tomorrow morning. So yeah, that's the future. It hasn't happened yet. But you're only thinking of it now. You can never actually have a future moment, because whatever you're going to be experiencing is always going to be now, right? So this is one of the ways that psychics actually harness the concept of time, and they raise their vibration and their consciousness to beyond the bubble of physicality. They go beyond the realm of time into no time, and from there they're able to project their consciousness into the past and the future, and they can make informed projections, and they can literally read the future timelines. So this gives us brings us to another parallel topic of timelines. So remember when I said think of time as existing in a bubble, and the past, present, and the future, everything exists within that bubble. So the way time is structured is that every single possible reality that could ever be experienced has already been created. We're moving through time thinking, we're moving through time with the illusion that your actions create something new. However, that's the illusion. So since the moment you were born, think of your life as a tree. You're born, you're going up the tree trunk, and the tree trunk starts to split up into various possibilities. One possibility is you you decide to get married. One possibility is you stay single. One possibility is you become a lawyer. One possibility is you become a doctor. All of these are represented as major splits in your timeline. So from a conceptual standpoint of God, all of these realities have been created. Like your soul's imprint creates a blueprint for all possible things that you can actually achieve in one lifetime, and those realities are created. So the way we explain free will, it's not that your destiny is predetermined. Now comes in the concept of free will, and free will has a very important role to play in the creation of time. We're crystal beings, we're crystallized beings. So through the concept of free will, we traverse the branches of the tree. So it's just that all of these possibilities exist, but that does not mean that they will become part of the dominant timeline. The dominant timeline is the one you actually choose, what you end up choosing through free will. So when you decide, yes, I want to get married, you crystallize that reality into the dominant timeline, and that becomes the dominant timeline now. So now you can't go back and not be married. You can't change the past. Literally, you can't change the past, but conceptually you can. So we'll get to that another point. But the way it works is that your choices, what you choose, once you choose it through free will, and free will is yours. That's where the concept of predestination comes in, that your path is actually made through your choices. So when you decide to become a doctor or a lawyer, you crystallize that reality, and from there you narrow down your reality to that one branch, and that branch can have many sub-branches, right? So this also brings us to the concept of probable realities and dominant realities. So in quantum physics, there's a concept called the uncertainty principle. And what that dictates is that everything exists as a wave or a particle. So this also applies to time. Time can exist, reality can exist as a wave or a particle. For example, I'm sitting on a couch and I'm thinking of having ice cream. So as soon as that thought bubble arrives in my reality, the possibility of having ice cream, I create a possible timeline, but that possible timeline has not come into my dominant reality yet. Okay? So your thoughts are so powerful that simply by giving power to a possibility, you're already creating a new version of Earth. You're creating a new version of Earth where you can possibly go and have ice cream. So let's say you decide, no, I'm gonna be on a diet and choose not to have ice cream. So you simply disregard that thought. So that timeline that you created where you're gonna have ice cream is simply gonna fade away. Okay? It does exist somewhere in the ether, but it's not part of the crystallized dominant timeline. However, if you decide to get up off your couch, go into your car, go to an ice cream parlor, and physically eat that ice cream, then that becomes your dominant reality. Whatever you choose becomes your dominant reality. So another way of looking at the concept of time is to look at, to envision yourself walking down a trail in a forest, and think of the trail as your whole timeline. Okay, so you can look behind, you look behind, you can see your past, You look forward, you can see a little bit in the future, but it's surrounded by so many thick trees that you cannot see beyond a certain point. You can only see like 20 meters ahead and 20 meters behind. But now think of the whole forest as time. Now you decide to go from linear time, which is the trail, you decide to go into vertical time. And vertical time moves upwards. So let's say you decide to vertically climb out of time into the tallest tree. And now you're perched above the forest. You can see everything from up here. You can see the path you were taking. You can see where you've been, all the various paths that brought you to that path that you were taking, and all the branches of the future where you can possibly go. So when we become hyper aware, when we become high consciousness beings, fifth dimensional beings, we raise our consciousness to the realms outside of time, and from there we can co-create, we can literally co-create our reality more easily, because we can see all the possibilities that exist ahead of us, and we can consciously choose, well, I better not do that because that just looks like a dead end. See, when you're walking unconsciously through time, you're going to end up making lots of mistakes. But when you raise your vibration, when you raise your frequency, you're able to connect vertically to your higher self. And your higher self has the bird's eye view. And your higher self is going to be able to help you navigate. So that's what it means to be present in vertical time and move out of linear time. So when you awaken, when you start connecting with your higher self and your lower self, with the core of Earth, you literally start moving through time vertically, because in connecting with your higher self, you're connected to higher guidance, and it's going to literally caution you and tell you, don't go there, don't do this. Yes, this is probably a choice you want to make. So all these factors come in, and that's when we start consciously co-creating time. I'm just going to look at a few other notes. Okay, so another concept is that the past, present, and the future are constantly changing, because you're a multidimensional being. This is really going to bend your mind, by the way. By changing your state of being, by changing your state of consciousness, you can actually change your past. So I myself have experienced this firsthand. I have done a very powerful past life regression where I experienced myself in an ancient past life as a baby, and as that baby I was very afraid, and the main purpose for that past life regression was to explore feeling of unworthiness that I was feeling at that point in my life. And going back through time, I was able to pinpoint which past lifetime gave birth to the idea of my unworthiness, because that's obviously an illusion. So I was able to time travel into a past life where I experienced myself as a baby in a very dark room, and I was crying, and no matter how long I would cry, my mother wouldn't arrive, and I was a neglected child. So I was actually able to relate to these feelings. I was actually able to feel the emotions I felt as that child, as that very, very young, scared infant. I was just trapped in my body in this dark world, and I did not have any help. So I felt I'm not worthy of love because of that experience, and I crystallized that so strongly in my being that I carried that feeling or that belief system for many lifetimes ahead, and it probably screwed me up big time. So when I did this past life regression, I was in the hands of a very capable healer, and the healer directed my mind to the possibility that maybe I can change the past. So once I dropped the belief system, he simply asked me, do you feel you are not worthy of love? And I said, no, of course. Now I know I am, but I didn't know it then. And he said, okay, so can you apply the same belief that you are worthy of love to that child? And I said, I think so. And I did that. And he said, okay, now experience the same child's life. How do you see it now? And I went back into that life. I literally time traveled with my consciousness. And I experienced the same child living in a completely parallel reality where there was, I literally saw a room full of lights. It was Christmas, there was family, and I was loved. I was sitting like, I was sitting in the lap of a very loving mother. And it was the same mother I had experienced in a parallel lifetime, in a parallel reality, but this time I was loved as a child. And that literally changed my past. So my soul, in my soul, I know that I have experienced both realities now. But because I changed that past life, I dropped so much baggage in my current state of being. I just dropped like thousands and thousands of years worth of trauma, because when I changed that lifetime that occurred like 1,000 lives ago, all of the lives since then also changed. So that's to explain the concept that time is malleable. Time can change. We can change our past, and from that we can change our present and our future. So enough said about this. I hope this gave you some insights, and if you like to share your comments or your thoughts, I would love to chat about it with you guys. And do let me know any other topics that you find interesting that you want to hear about. I'm all about metaphysical concepts and how it relates to our reality. And the most important thing is, we don't just talk about these concepts as pie in the sky theories. It's important to learn how to apply these concepts to make ourselves better, make our lives better, and to better all of humanity as a result. So I love you guys, and we'll chat soon. Bye.